Let me start with the least important things first, namely the Daily Telegraph. That's the newspaper that I cost £2.3 million when they defamed me in 2005. 2003, actually. The case came to a conclusion in 2005 with the Telegraph £2.3 million down. So they'd be well advised to be extra careful when writing about me. But who knew that the Sunday Telegraph, the Sunday Torygraph, a failing newspaper that almost had to be bailed out by the United Arab Emirates before the colonels who read it decided that Johnny Foreigner could not possibly be allowed to own their newspaper. Who knew that the Sunday Telegraph would be so interested in the social media scribblings of some people unknown to me, others known to me and of whom I'm proud, but people unknown to me who are described as Workers' Party activists have had their social media scribblings mined by, I doubt if it was the Sunday Telegraph, if you want my honest opinion. I somehow think that they had assistance from somewhere. After all, it's a very labour-intensive job to find from amongst the thousands of new members and activists of the Workers' Party of Britain obscure comments made, which actually, when you decipher them, were no more or less than what is common parlance in the feverish, febrile atmosphere that currently exists and is bound to exist, you know, when there's a genocide going on, when there's an actual genocide going on. I'll summarize them this way because I wasn't able to read the whole article because that would have required me to give the Telegraph money. And, you know, it's the other way around normally. They give me money. I didn't want to pay their paywall fee, so I've only seen excerpts. But if I summarize it, they attack us for claiming that Israel has purchased a large swathe of the British political scene. Well, who can doubt that? The supporters of Israel have purchased a massive stake in the British political infrastructure, superstructure. The Conservative Friends of Israel, the Labour Friends of Israel, the Liberal Democrat Friends of Israel, all these friends of Israel for reasons that no one can really fathom. I told you on Wednesday about the two MPs for Runcorn. Have you seen Runcorn? Both of the MPs for Runcorn are members of the Labour Friends of Israel. Why? What first attracted the members of Parliament for Runcorn in Cheshire to a tiny little state on the edge of the Mediterranean, thousands of miles away? Certainly not the interests of the people of Runcorn, who've prospered little from the tenure of their two Labour MPs over recent years. Maybe that's a place we should be looking more closely at. So that's the first charge, that activists of the Workers' Party have said that Israel owns a considerable part of the British political system. I'm sorry, Your Honour, my Lord. I'm sorry, but that one has Veritas as its ultimate defence. And the other was that some of our activists had compared the actions of Israel over the last 6 months exactly today with the Nazis. Well, again, my Lord, Your Honour, when you are a country on trial for genocide in front of the world's highest court and have been found plausibly to be guilty of same charge and sent for trial on same charge, is anybody surprised that people might begin to compare them to another genocide, the genocide of Hitler fascism, the beast of Berlin, the people who slaughtered the Warsaw Ghetto, the people who drowned in blood millions of people in Treblinka, in Auschwitz, in all of these other death camps liberated by the Soviet Red Army, and their disastrous, ghastly secrets exposed to the world by those who did the most to defeat that Hitler fascism, Mussolini fascism, Tojo fascism. Is anyone surprised that when you massacre tens of thousands of women and children in cold blood, women and children who've got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, no shelter, no exit, not even the sea to run into, is anyone surprised that people might begin to compare such methods with the methods of fascism in the Holocaust with a capital H? Well, if you really don't know that Israel has purchased a large number of British politicians, not to mention American politicians, they seem to have purchased all of those, all of them, millions and millions of dollars used to purchase that. If you really don't know that, and if you are really surprised that a country on trial for genocide might be compared to another country which indisputably committed genocide, namely the fascist regimes of the 1930s and 40s, you're not really a newspaper. But then the Telegraph isn't really a newspaper. As the briefest scan of its last 6 months' coverage makes clear, it is a propaganda sheet. I said sheet. It is a propaganda sheet designed for and used for the purpose of fooling the British people into believing that supporting this genocide could conceivably be morally justified or could conceivably be held to be in the British national interest. And of course, neither of those things could possibly hold up to question. The second thing that's happened, you remember I told you about my new show, an irregular show that I do myself, that I make myself from my own pocket, for which I get paid not a cent from anybody. Have it out with Galloway.com. Do you remember? I showed you a little, there it is. I showed you a little vignette from it. Today, the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the British Parliament, no less, gave me, and presumably it was intended for other eyes, a stentorian warning that I must not be allowed to present that show. Well, thank you, Alice Kearney, whoever you are. Never set eyes on you in my life, never heard you speak, never seen your name ever in print before. She warned me, and presumably, as I say, intended for other eyes, that I must not be allowed to make this show. Well, let me tell you, Alice or Alicia, whatever your name is, let me tell you something. First of all, you've just gained rather a large number of new viewers for my show, Have It Out with Galloway, when I next make it, when it next goes out. Thank you for that. But you, nor anybody else, in Parliament or out of Parliament, will ever be able to stop me speaking my truth anywhere I decide to speak it. Now, as it happens, this is nobody's show but mine. M-I-N-E, mine. Nobody else's show but mine. But let me tell you, Iran is not my enemy. Russia is not my enemy. China is not my enemy. You are my enemy. You and your shadow, capital S, and the rotten system that both of you represent are my enemy. So don't dream of imagining that I'm afraid of you or anybody else. I am afraid only of God and occasionally of my good wife. Let me turn to more important things. According to the German media, the talks going on, indirect, no doubt, or at least on the face of it, indirect, between Qatar, the Egyptian government, and the CIA are close to agreement on ending the war in Gaza. A 6-month war that has murdered and maimed well over 120,000 people, has left almost 2 million Palestinians homeless. And by homeless, I mean not just lacking a home, I mean their homes are now in rubble. Their homes are completely destroyed. A 6 months which has unleashed devastating epidemics of disease. A 6 months which has left well over 70% of all Palestinian children, and most of the people in Gaza are children, suffering from malnutrition, except where they are suffering and dying from actual starvation. Not malnutrition, but starvation, which has displaced almost 2 million people, which has left the entire Gaza Strip looking even worse than the Warsaw Ghetto crushed by fascism in the 1940s. If the war does end this evening, does anybody think we're going to move on? Does anybody think that it can be back to business as usual between our countries, our companies, our politicians, and the state responsible for all of that? Does anybody imagine that there will ever be glad, confident morning again, either for Israel or for its many friends in the political class in Western countries? Does anybody imagine that we're going to forget these things? You see, unlike the Holocaust of the 1930s and 40s, we've got the receipts, all of us, on our telephones, on our computers, in our minds. We've seen these children in rags, their flesh in ribbons, hanging on hooks, dead. We've seen them with their heads blown off. We've seen them with their guts spilling out. We've seen the children mourning their mothers, begging them to come out from the ground and hug them one last time. We've seen the fathers scrambling in the rubble, trying to rescue their wives and their children. We saw it, and we've still got the videos. So don't imagine that if this all ends this evening, this week, for Eid, or whatever other wheeze they have in mind, that we're going back to business as usual with you, that we're going to forgive you, Joe Biden, that we're going to forgive you, Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, David Lammy, Anthony Blinken, little soldier Schultz, little Napoleon Macron. Don't dream of imagining that we are going to forget everything that you did, everything that you facilitated, everything that you made possible during this long dystopian 6-month nightmare in which blood flowed freely because of you. We intend to hold you to account. We intend to vote you out, or we will die trying. We will never forgive you. We'll never forgive Israel. We'll never forgive Netanyahu. We'll never forgive Netanyahu's friends and enablers. This was the moral question of the century. Palestine is the moral center of the world. And where you stood on it will determine how tens of millions of people view you for the rest of your miserable lives before you face the judgment day, as we all will. No one can predict your fate, but we can all hope that you all burn in the hottest fires of hell for the misery, murder, mayhem that you have created for a people who were overwhelmingly women and children. You say that you've won the war, Netanyahu, as you withdraw your soldiers from Gaza. But you know, and we know, that you lost the war. You lost the physical, kinetic war on the ground. You've lost hundreds of soldiers and thousands of wounded soldiers, and thousands more mentally damaged because of what you sent them in to do. But above all, you've lost it economically, you've lost culturally, you have lost your soft power advantage forever around the world. Let me turn now, in the next couple of minutes, which is all I have left, to the miserable, featureless desert that we have in Western politics. It's now certain that Zion Don Trump will face off with genocide Joe Biden for the presidency of the United States. It's now clear that little Rishi Sunak, the shoeshine boy for the British Empire, will face up to a block of wood called Keir Starmer. It's obvious that Le Pen is the next president of France, which is why her tooth and claw is currently under operation for removal, just like her fellow right-wing nationalist Meloni in Italy. The price of being allowed to win is that you abandon every radical position that you ever held. Little soldier Schultz and Anna Baerbock, the bonkers foreign minister of Germany, bereft of public support in a way never before seen in German politics, are facing up to the anonymity of Christian democracy. What's my point? My point is that there is now a vacuum in Western politics which needs to be filled. We in the Workers' Party of Britain are seeking to fill it. We're not woke. We're not liberal. We stand up for our own country. We stand up for the interests of our own people. But we will not follow blindly any foreign leader. We will not make an enemy automatically of anyone. Neither will we unconditionally accept your friendship, whoever you are, whatever our history together. We are economically radical. We want to change everything about how people work and are paid for work in our country. We are socially mixed. Some of us are conservative. Some of us are as camp as Christmas. We care not about anybody's personal life, with whom they sleep, as long as they don't frighten the horses or do it in front of the children. Still less do we care what color you are. Still less do we care how you pray, where you came from, when you came. We care nothing about any of that. If you're in our country legally, then you are a sister and brother to us. And all we ask is that you open your mind to the possibility that the uni party, the two cheeks of the same arse that have led us into disaster after disaster, just open your mind to the possibility that you'd be better off with a perfect, big change, the change to the Workers' Party of Britain. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a busy, busy night. You can call us. You can vote on our poll. 40,000 of you have already done so, and I'm only now finishing speaking. It's the mother of all talk shows.